What's up, everybody? So today I wanted to talk about something a little different. I want to talk about automating Recon with Bash scripting. Now, you've seen me do some automation examples, or at least some Bash scripting examples in the Zero to Hero series and in our Linux for Hackers series. But in the last video, we talked about hunting down third-level domains when it comes to bug bounties in just Recon, and I wanted to expand upon that and automate some of the tasks that we were doing. So not only are we going to get out a lesson in bug hunting in third-level domains, but we're also going to apply automating that process with Recon and Bash scripting. So before we get started, if you're new to the channel, please do hit that subscribe button. If you like the video, please do hit the like button. And of course, you could always hit the bell if you're interested in getting notifications for when we release new videos. So let's jump right into this. So let's take a look at what we're trying to accomplish. So if we come over here and let's talk briefly about domains. So the .com here, when we say com, that is a top level domain. Now Yahoo itself is a second level domain. And then we come into address, that is a third level domain. And beyond that are fourth level domains. So when we do enumeration, say on yahoo.com, and if we're doing an external pen test, or we're doing a web app, or we're doing any sort of bug bounty hunting, we might say yahoo.com, let's run that through a subdomain finder like Sublister or AMAS or CertSpotter or CRTSH, etc. And then we're going to find a whole list of potential subdomains. Well, from that list, we might get some weird things that pop through, right? We might see this cardav, we might see BSKYB cardav, or if we look through here, see this dev-astra-serving.assistant.yahoo.com. So if we were only hunting down third level domains, assistant.yahoo.com or analytics or anything, we're gonna miss everything over here to the left, anything from the fourth on. So what we need to do is we need to hunt these down as well to make sure we cover everything in full when we're looking at a site like yahoo.com. So let's open up the leaf pad here and let's talk about this automation process and some things that we do when we're enumerating that we could automate here. So for one, we gather the subdomains with Sublister. So we'll say, hey, Sublister, go ahead and run yahoo.com, compile all the subdomains that you find. Well, from there, we're going to need to gather all of the third level domains because it doesn't just find the fourth levels on their own. It actually only finds up to third levels, and maybe it finds some fourth levels in there if it sees it on Google or wherever they're searching. But we need to compile everything that it finds in the initial search using a little regex to pull out things like a.yahoo.com, but leave off the fr-ca. So then we have a list of all the third levels, and we'll say, hey, auto.yahoo.com, for example. Once we have all these third levels in a text file, we need to go ahead and rerun those with Sublister to start finding all the fourth levels and beyond when it comes to these domains. From there, we have a nice list, but we're pulling these lists down from Google and other places. It doesn't mean that the host is actually alive and responding. It just means that we found them via search engine. So they could have been something that existed before, and now we don't, they're not there. So they're not even alive. They're just in our list. So we need to make sure that the hosts are alive. Once they're alive, we can scan those with nmap to look for open ports and odd ports. Maybe we find something interesting here, right? And then when that's all said and done, we can also run a tool called Eyewitness, which takes screenshots on the alive host. And then we can kind of just take a look at, what hosts are up, what they look like, and have a quick glance. So this is something that a bug bounty hunter, pen tester might do during a assessment. And we can automate this to where we just enter in, hey, run this script with yahoo.com, and it does everything else for us. Now, I do have an example on the Huffington Post where I ran this script, And the script looks something like this. Now, it's not beautiful by any means. There's nothing sexy about this script. It is just purely functional. So this is the script, and we're going to go kind of line by line and talk about it. But the end result is something like this. Everything is dumped into this final.txt. And then from the final.txt, we gather these third level domains and pump it in. Well, we gather things, put them into final. We gather the third level domains and then dump all those into final as well. We probe those to see what's alive. And then when we do that, we run everything into scans. We have everything into third levels here, if anything that returns. And then we also have our Eyewitness report here, which if we open up, for example, the report, you can kind of see what Eyewitness looks like. It takes a nice screenshot of the host and it gives you the web info as well. So you see Huffington Post here, elections.huffington Post, the IP it resolved to, the page title. It gives you all the header information as well. So very, very useful information to kind of scroll through here and see like a random login page or something that looks off, that we just know, hey, ding, the light bulb goes off and we're hunting it down, right? So this is kind of what we're after. Now let's start kind of just building this out. I'm going to open up a new tab here, and what we'll do is we'll build it out together, and I'll make the best sense of this that I can. So of course we're going to need to do bin bash up here. If you've never scripted in bash before, that's completely okay. A couple of the tools that we're going to use, one is sublister and the other is going to be http probe. HT probe is what it's called actually. You could do apt install sublister in your terminal and that will install that. And if you want to install htt probe, that is done by Tom Nom Nom, and he has it on GitHub here at github.com, tomnomnom/htt probe. So I will go ahead and link that down in the description below as well. So what we're going to do first, let's follow our little checklist. So in this, when you're writing out scripting, you should do something logically like this. First thing is you want to make it to where it's functional, and you want to think logically, okay, what are the steps that I need to do? And then from there, you can put your script together, and then you can start thinking things out and start thinking through some of the flaws you might have and how you can improve upon things. And I'll kind of walk through some of those that I ran into when I was doing this. So let's go ahead and talk about the first thing. First, we need to gather subdomains with sublister, right? So we can do that here. And I'm just going to leave some space because I'm going to put some things up top. But we could say something like echo gathering subdomains with sublister. If I could type today, that would be even better, right? Okay, and then we could say sublister, which is the command that we'd run in a terminal. This is all based on terminal. Domain, and then we need to supply a domain. So if you're familiar or not familiar, this $1 is the first input. So let's say this script, and you see it, I call it run it here just because that's what I thought of in my lack of sleep when I was writing this. But let's say it's runit.sh, and then you say yahoo.com. $1 correlates to yahoo.com here. So we're saying, hey, whatever is put into the first input, that's what we're going to go ahead and take. So when we run the script, we're just going to take $1 from the user input, and then we're going to do output and put this into something called final.txt. Now we could try to like put this into a file called final.txt, but with sublister, what I found out is that it actually puts binary for some reason into the text file. So it has its own output format. I went ahead and just used that, and we wrote a file out called output.txt. Okay, so now, as you can imagine, we run this, say on yahoo.com, and we get a bunch of subdomains, beta.yahoo, dev.yahoo, corp.yahoo, right? So we've got this whole list. From here, we want to do what now? We want to compile the third level domains. So if we go back in here, you see we want to compile third level domains. Okay, so let's go ahead and just say echo compiling third level domains. And let me go ahead and save this. That way we get some nice color here when we're doing this. Okay, so we've got this sublister here. Now what we need to do is we need to compile out this file. So imagine we have some documents, and let's go ahead and open up a terminal, and I'll just make something. So let's just say gedit, we'll call it domain test.text. And let's imagine now that what's come back is something like dev.yahoo.com, corp.yahoo.com. But then there's also some weird domains. And actually, we can just copy some of these. Like, let's just copy this list. And you see that there's some 4th levels in here on the 3rd levels as well. And we can paste this. And let me go ahead and just remove the HTTP here. Let's remove the HTTPS and the HTTP. Replace all. Okay, so now we got this list of addresses. And what we're after is we need to only capture the first 3, right? We need to capture the first 3 here. And what we can do is we can use a little regex. Now, I will be honest with you. I don't know the first thing about regex. And I'm going to copy this and show you a nice site. I don't know the first thing about regex, but I do know how to Google. And that's what's super important when it comes to scripting or coding. Just having the idea here, saying, hey, I need to strip down the 3rd level domains, but what if I get something weird like API-BCP? I know advertisinginsights.yahoo.com is the one I'm after. How can I strip these out? Well, there is a nice site called regex 101, and I can pull this over here. And the regex isn't correct what I've got, but you can see that I pasted this into regex101.com. And right now we're only pulling yahoo.com. So we're pulling the top level and the 2nd level. Now, if we copy from the script what we have, and this only just came from a little bit of Googling and some thought process. So when I first saw this, let me open that up again. When I first saw this, I just got this here, and I said, okay, well, it's taking the W plus, it's taking this, and another W plus. What if we just add one more W plus in with the period here, right? I don't know the first thing about regex, but I know this works. So you can see that we're pulling dev, corp. Okay, we're not pulling this 4th level, not pulling this 4th level. And so this is really what we're trying to do. So to show you why I'm doing this, we've saved domain text. Now we need to be able to make sure that this works. So let's cat domain test here. And then we need to be able to grep on something, right? So we got to grep on this regex. And when we grep on the regex and we say -po here for regex, to pull the regex down, we need a quotations around it, I'm sorry. You see now that it's pulling everything out that we need, but look, there's duplicates. Okay, so what do we need to do with duplicates? We need to take those out. We could just do a sort unique. And my dogs are deciding to bark during a video. What's new, guys? They do this all the time. So we can see now we've pulled down just 4 addresses out of here. So we could take this fancy thing here and copy it. And then we come to this test.sh and we go ahead and just put this in. And then I'll just throw this into something called 3rd level.text. Okay, so far when we run this script, it's going to gather this, and then it's going to gather subdomains, and then it's going to take all the 3rd levels out of there, and we're going to have a nice list of 3rd levels, and they're all going to be unique. So that's really what we're after. So from here, we need to rerun sublister through the iteration of all of these subdomains that are in 3rd level. So what does that sound like? We need to do a for loop. So we can say gathering full 3rd level domains with sublister. And here we can do a for loop. So we'll say something like for domain in, and then let's go ahead and just cat out 3rd level.text. Okay, so just making sure, if you've never seen a for loop, this is going to take every single line in this 3rd level.text and iterate through it one at a time. So the first line, it's going to do what I tell it to do. Second line, it's going to repeat that process. So that's why it's called a loop. It keeps repeating. So we're going to do something when we do this loop. We're going to run sublister. And instead of supplying the domain, we're going to say $domain. And all we're doing is calling this domain here. The first line, second line, third line, it all gets put back in here through each iteration of this loop. Now I'm going to go ahead and output this somewhere. Now this is going to create a lot of output files. I really don't want that big mess here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just make a directory. I'm going to put it to a directory called third levels. And then I'm going to just output it to domain.txt. All right. And lastly, I'm going to cat out that file, do domain.txt here, and I'm going to sort it by unique. And then what am I going to do with it? I'm going to throw it back into final, which is in our directory. Why am I doing that? Because as of right now, when we grab this list, we're grabbing only third level domains. Now, things like www. Are getting left off. Yahoo.com is actually left off in this instance. So if we only use what's found in the third levels and not from this initial list, we're going to lose some subdomains and our initial domain as well. So it's important to throw it back into the file of which we started with and just append it to the bottom. We're going to sort it by unique at the end. It's going to be fine if we have some sort of duplicates along the way. On top of that, it wouldn't hurt to echo $1 here into final.txt as well, just to ensure, because when we search yahoo.com and it brings down these subdomains, it doesn't pull yahoo.com back with the list. So we might as well throw yahoo.com into this list as well. And that way, when we do the scan, we do the nmap and Eyewitness, we at least get the website that we wanted to scan as well in this list. Otherwise, we're going to miss it. And when I first wrote this script, I did not compile this. I didn't compile this, and I was missing quite a bit. So going back and rewriting it to do this, super beneficial. So at this point, we have a folder called third levels that we didn't create. So when we first start this, we can say make directory third levels. But what if we run into an instance where, let me do an example, make dir bug notes is a folder I have. You're going to see that it says cannot create the directory bug notes file exists. Now that's fine when we write the script if it already exists. For some reason, if we ran the script twice and third levels already existed, then we're going to have an instance where it exists and it's going to throw that error and it's just going to move on. Now, if we don't want to see that error, we can write a quick little if statement, and we could say if this directory does not exist, the directory third levels does not exist, then go ahead and make the directory. And then we'll end this. So if it doesn't exist, we'll make the directory. If it does exist, then we'll just skip it. Easy enough. Okay, so now we've gathered the full third level domains. Now we need to do something that will pick up if these third level domains are actually alive. Now, what does that? Well, it's that tool by TomNomNom that I showed you in the beginning called HTTP probe. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say echo probing for a live third level domain, or third levels. We just call it this. Okay, so we probe for the alive third levels. Now, how are we going to do this? Well, we're going to cat out the final.txt, and we got to sort it by unique. So we get rid of all the duplicates that we might have. From there, we're going to run HTTP probe, or HTTP probe. And I can show you an example of what this looks like. So we have this domain test. We can run we can cat domain test and then run HTTP probe. And everything that returns here comes back if it's alive. So The ones that are alive just returned, and you see that it puts in front of it HTTP and it puts in front of it HTTPS. Now, in my instance, the only ones that I know for a fact are alive are the HTTPS, and that's because the HTTP for me automatically resolves to my router, and it tries to look it up through a search engine. And so anything that's with HTTP, I just don't believe. So because of that, I have to actually, if we do HTTP probe and do like a -- help, you can see that we need to skip the default probes, and then we can do an additional probe by doing the protocol and port. So what that's going to look like is we're going to do a -s to strip off 80 and 443. It doesn't let you do one or the other. And then we'll throw back in HTTPS on 443. Now, we're going to run into an issue here. The next step, and I'm just going to throw this in because you'll run into the issue eventually. But the next step, you see that what's happening is, and we can add the s-p HTTPS 443. You can see it's pulling those back. Well, now we have HTTPS // in the front and 443 at the end, the :443. If we try to pass this list into nmap, we're going to run into issues. So we need to strip off everything but address.yahoo.com and so forth. So we need to get rid of the 443 and the HTTPS. Now, in order to get rid of the 443, we can use sed, and I had to Google this. I am not a sed expert. If there are two things I am terrible at, it's regex and it's sed. So again, I just Googled, how do you get rid of HTTP and HTTPS in the front of something, in a domain name, etc. And it's just this. It's just sed, and it looks like this. So if you want to copy that down, it's just along these lines. And then on top of that, we can run that, and you'll see that coming through here. Now we still have the :443. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to translate this. So we just say translate, delimiter, and then we just take off 443 at the end. And you see now that it's running this probe, and it's pulling these back just the way we want them. So that's perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy this and throw it in here as well. Okay, and now my cat's doing the scratchy pad in here, and guys, I cannot control any noise today. So usually I close the door. Today I risked it, and this is what happens when I risk it. Dogs bark, cats do the scratchy pad. I live in a zoo. So we're gonna put this out into probe.txt. And probe.txt is going to be everything that we've probed that comes back alive. All right, now we have a file. We're in the home stretch, kind of. So if we come back and we look at the leaf pad, we probed for a live host. Now we need to scan those hosts and run Eyewitness. Not a big deal. Okay, so we can just say echo scanning for open ports. And then we can just say nmap, this is for inlist probe.txt, output all. And again, we want to output the stuff, but we don't want to make a mess. So we're going to do scans, and we'll just call it scan.txt. Okay, and from there, guess what? Quick copy paste to do the same thing with this folder. We'll look for scans, and we'll look for scans here. Or we'll make the directory if it doesn't exist. So this is going to run through and look for open ports, and we're just doing open ports. We can actually do a T4 on this if we want to speed it up a little bit, or even a T5, make it quick. That'll run through it. If we wanted to be detailed with it, we could do a -p-, and build this out. But for here, this is perfectly fine. And then we can just say, okay, last thing I want to do is run Eyewitness. So we say running Eyewitness. Now, if Eyewitness isn't installed, same thing, app install Eyewitness in your terminal will install this for you. So we run Eyewitness, and we just say Eyewitness. And now if you look at the documentation for Eyewitness, and let me give you a good example of what's wrong and why we need to add something in here. Let's go ahead and just change directory into my bug notes. Now let's gedit a test.txt here. And I'm just gonna throw something in here. I could have just did that with cat, but that's fine. So what we could do is say we wanted to eyewitness a file, and the file is going to be the test.txt. Typically, most things work where you provide test.txt and it says, yeah, I see that. I'm gonna be good here. So we'll do a domain or a directory. We'll just do the directory of testing, and then we'll do -- all protocols. Now, this is what it's going to go do now. It's going to go to HTTP, HTTPS, try to take screenshots. It's also going to go out to RDP and VNC and try to take screenshots there. When we hit enter, it says you didn't give me a valid file name, but we did. We absolutely gave it a valid file name. It needs a full path directory. So we could do something like this would give us the directory, and it would look through that and try to do it. So what we need to do is we need to declare the present working directory. So that way, if you do declare where you're putting this, it's going to be in present working directory. And yeah, so it's still not the best. The best would be to specify a directory where your eyewitness is and have a parameter here. But for us, it's fine to just say pwd, something like this, to declare present working directory. And then we could just say here, present working directory, and then probe.txt, right? So, and this is fine because probe.txt is getting put into this directory. If we were specifying this somewhere else, then we might run into issues, but for this scripting purposes, it's actually fine. Then we need to specify a directory or what we're going to write the folder name to. I just do $1. We'll call it yahoo.com or whatever we put in here, right? So this is pretty easy. Now what happens is this will get stored into a different folder, and let's finish this out, all protocols. Now this gets stored into a different folder. So it gets put from the user share eyewitness folder and $1, but we don't want to have to navigate to user share eyewitness, yahoo.com to see our report. We can just move that to our eyewitness folder and make it $1. So it'll move this directory here is all it's going to do. Now again, we don't have an eyewitness directory, but we can quickly make one if it doesn't already exist. Okay, so now we've got this pretty well written out. There are a few things that we can do. So at this point in time, this only takes one command. We could write an if statement at the beginning and say if the number of inputs does not equal 1, then we're going to print out usage and say, hey, this is how you run the script. If it doesn't, if you have no arguments or you have 2 arguments, then this isn't going to work. I'm going to copy and paste this over what I have, and I'll show you the one little change that I'm going to add in through logical thinking, and this will improve as well. So as of right now, I say if $pound is greater than 2, meaning if we have more than 2 arguments, then let's go ahead and echo out the usage. Now this is broken, okay? This is broken because if somebody supplies 0, it's still going to work. So really we need to say if greater than 2 and more than 0, right? Then we echo this out. Or less than 1, greater than 2, less than 1. Sorry, we would echo this out and exit the script. But for this purpose, I'm not too worried about it. This is just a quick little usage to put in the top. So what's going to happen here is something that we need to think about logically is, okay, this is great. This script's perfect if we have a situation where we're scanning a wildcard. Now, this is only really for bug bounty purposes, but we can add into this other things as well. Let's say like the bug bounty scope was *yahoo.yahoo.com. That means we can scan any single subdomain the script would work. What if that is the scope, but out of scope is corp.yahoo.com? Well, we can gather all this information out and then go grep it out later and just let it run. That's one option. We could also specify to not run corp when we do this. So the best place for it is probably somewhere in the beginning. To make it very simple, as long as we remove corp before we actually probe for whatever's alive, it'll also be okay. Logically, this is not the best way to do this. Absolutely not the best way to do this. There are better ways to do this, and I'm going to talk about improving the script here in a second. So I'm going to go ahead and just write this statement here, and I'm actually going to copy this. Now I'm going to copy and paste it, and if you're following along, you're writing this, I encourage you to pause the video. I'm only swapping this probe out, and you'll see the difference here in a second. Okay, so if our arguments are equal to 2, then what we're going to do is we're going to probe for the live third levels. We're going to remove, grep-v remove something. So we would say something like, or script.sh, whatever we call this. And then we say, okay, we're going to probe yahoo.com, and we're going to not scan corp.yahoo.com. So what this is going to do is this is going to grep out anything with corp in it and remove it from this list. It's going to then probe it, do the HTTPS, everything that we already did, and put it into the probe file. Now, if it doesn't have that second argument, then it's just going to do what you saw before. It's going to run this normal scan, and we don't have anything to worry about. But if we wanted to remove an item from the list, this is one way to do it. Now let's talk really quick before we end the video. Let's talk about logical flaws. One logical flaw here is obviously this. The best situation for this is probably not right here. It's probably better to actually remove this when we gather the subdomains. Or, you know, out of final.txt, we could grep out every single thing, so we don't have to run it through an iteration of scanning with sublister. It's just one iteration, but still it adds time into our script if we don't need it. The second item is we would have to build this in to ensure that this would work with multiple subdomains. What if we wanted to specify more than just corp? What if it's dev and beta and corp? You know, 3 different subdomains. How are we going to grep that out? How do we think that through logically? At this time, this is only built for one subdomain removal. So on top of this, ways to improve. Now in Python, there's something called argparse, and you can do the same thing with bash. You can create argument related activities, right? So let's say we wanted to say script, and then we could say -- help to print out, you know, the help usage. Or if we wanted to say -e to include Eyewitness in this, or -n to include nmap. So we could have switches for running nmap and Eyewitness, and then we can build in all kinds of different tools that we can run into one recon. We could do a -a for all and just run the big, massive scan. We can do -x for exclude, and we would have all the different domains we would exclude if we needed to. And you can continue just building this in. So this, what I wanted to show you was not something that was perfectly polished. I wanted to show you something where we could take a thought. And this is all we have as a thought here. We say, I want to gather these subdomains, and by the end of it, I want to know everything that's alive, have an nmap scan on them, and I want to have Eyewitness on all of these. You could take this, you can do it so much better, improve upon it. But the way that you script, the way that you code, you start with an idea. You test out your ideas. You get better and better over time. All this that came together was not the initial script. I ran into a lot of errors. It's a lot of trial by fire. You know, you have to gather these things. Again, like knowing to add back in the original domain, or that I'm missing different domains from this original list. You know, I didn't even think about that, but it became clear towards the end. And it became clear that I originally didn't think about removing a domain. So I can remove one, still not perfect here, right? Making directories and having errors, important as well. Knowing certain things like, okay, this is going to put out HTTPS and nmap doesn't like HTTPS in the front, so we got to remove that. Guess how I found that out? I found it out the bad way of just letting this probe run through nmap and nmap failing. So same thing with the Eyewitness, with this probe failing, the text file failing, etc. So it's all trial by error. It's best to build this out piece by piece. The way I do this is I make sure step 1 works, then I make sure step 2 works, step 3, and I do them in pieces. And then I'll take the output from like step 4 and I'll put it to step 5. Take step 5, put it to step 6, or however it works to make sure they chain together, but you don't have to waste your time running it over and over and over. Especially when it's a script that runs, like if you have a domain like yahoo.com, for example. If we look at yahoo.com, you'll see that this third levels are insane. And then when you start going through the third levels and reiterating this with sublister, it takes forever. So you want to make sure that you're not like waiting for that process to repeat every single time just to know if it worked functionally fully on one go. So that's really it. I tried to make this, just informative, kind of just off the cuff a little bit on how to write these, how to think about automating Recon. And hopefully for those of you that don't have a big bash background or a big scripting background, this is something that you can take and utilize. You don't have to take this script, but you take the thoughts away from this and say, okay, maybe I start building this out logically. I write it down what I want it to do, and then I just take pieces by pieces. And a lot of this is just Googling. I didn't know how to write the sed command. I didn't know how to write this regex. This one took a while to figure out because I'm not very smart when it comes to any of this stuff. So if I can do it, you absolutely can do it. So get your wheels spinning, start thinking about these things. Super useful to automate this. Think about all the time that this saves just by automating this. I can run this script, walk away, go eat dinner, go drink coffee, wherever time it may be. I can go do something else while this is doing all the work for me. Absolutely necessary when it comes to getting time back in your life and just being able to multitask at a higher level. This is great for pen tests. This is great for your billable rate. This is great for bug bounties as well. So hopefully you learned something today. Again, not incredibly polished script, but I really do hope that it was valuable for everybody. Again, please do hit that like, subscribe, comment down below if you have any comments on this, and you could tell me I suck and the script sucks. That's okay too. So until the next video, my name has been TCM, and I really do thank you guys for joining me.